Hello art world and welcome back to my channel. Today we'll be looking at a drawing I did of Wolverine. Typical fashion, ink wash for the outline. Started with a pencil sketch and I will be moving to Copic markers and a little bit of white pencil chalk, like it's a charcoal, white charcoal basically, for a little bit of highlight at the end. And this is not a complete drawing. I still am going to be working on this one, as I will be with some of my other ones. So you can check out my Instagram at smartful creations, smartful_creations, and keep an eye out for some of the older stuff that I'll be revamping. Some of the stuff I put into digital form and I redo them, or add things like backgrounds, or just add some flair to them. But yeah, with this one, inspiration came from just seeing other people do a lot of comic book character hero art, and I felt like, oh, I don't really do too much of that, so try my hand at it. I always do a sketch beforehand on some white paper, just something I can throw away and not, just something to loosen my hand up and get the basic form down. So I did that first and then moved on to this, onto tan tone paper, Strathmore paper, which I like, just because I know somewhat how the Copics play with this paper. I know how they'll look when they're dry. That's something to note for you guys, for people watching, if you are watching, that these Copics, when you put them down, that's not the color you're going to have within the first 5 minutes. It changes color drastically. It goes through many different shade changes. So when you put the color down, don't be intimidated. Sometimes that took me a little while to get used to that fact, that it's not what it seems like when you put it down. So when you put it down, it seems overbearing and thick. Right there, this is a problem that tends to reoccur if you overfill your markers, so be wary of overfilling them. So what happened was, I was putting down the that is R11, and I was putting that down and it flooded. Oh no, I'm sorry, E00. That I get those confused because on this tan paper it looks a little bit, that E0 looks a little bit fleshier. It looks like it has a more rosacea sort of look to it. But yeah, so I put that down. As I was putting that down, I guess I had too much ink in there, too much of the marker liquid in there, and what happened was it built up on the tip, and then I didn't notice, and I was holding the marker and looking at the drawing, and I got distracted and didn't notice that it had built up, and when I pressed the tip down, it just flooded out, like there was a ton of liquid there, so it made a little splotch. You can go back and take a look at that on the film if you'd like. But it leaves a little splotch there, and it spreads very quickly. And if you're doing precision work like I was trying to do, I didn't want it to get on the teeth, and it covered the teeth. It went below his chin onto his chest, so now I have conflicting colors on different areas where I didn't want them. So sometimes you can fix that, like you'll see that I do here. But always just try to make sure you're putting just enough liquid in these markers. Try not to overfill them, because that will happen. Unless you're going for, like, if you're coloring in a big area, or you're going for that that sort of effect where you want it to be messy, you can do that. I could see it working in those scenarios, but yeah, if you're doing precision work and you're trying to keep things precise, and you don't want it to go certain areas, and you want the marker to go just where you touch the marker to the paper, try not to overfill them then for that drawing. So here I use N2 and N0 only. I didn't go up to N4 this time for the dark areas of his suit because I just didn't want to go too dark with this one. I like leaving things light. There it was again. It happened again. You can see a good remedy if the marker keeps doing that, where it keeps flooding the tip, and it's hard to keep it from getting overworked onto the paper like that, and it just floods out. A good way to help slow that or stop it completely for a moment or momentarily is to turn the pencil upside down. Then it'll obviously all flood to the other tip, but keep in mind it will come back, so you will need to keep doing that. It doesn't just stop. Obviously, gravity's gonna pull that excess back to the tip, and it will happen again. So be wary of that. Be mindful of it, and just know that you need to keep doing that to keep the until it reaches a certain volume. It's going to continue doing that. So Y23 up at the top, Y21 here as I get lower onto his suit. So Y23 is a little bit darker, Y21 is a little bit more, a little bit less golden, a little more yellow. Y23 I'm noticing is a little bit more golden colored, which is good because you can use it in the darker areas. Technique I'm using here is to map out the darker areas with the step up, the next shade up in progression, and then I kind of use it almost as like a I'm darkening with lines and then leaving space for where the highlights are, and going back and doing a full wash over top of that to create highlights that blend with the rest of the area that you're coloring. So I'm trying to find a way to explain this easily. Obviously your highlights you want lighter, but you don't want them too light. You don't want them the same color as the paper. Sometimes depending on what you're doing, once again, you may want everything to blend in certain areas. So in the area on his ribs there, I wanted his muscles to pop out, but I wanted them to blend to look like uniform with the rest of his outfit. But I still wanted them to pop, so I went underneath with the darker shade, and then I left that area completely blank, and then colored with 2 layers around it, around the area, so that it's a shade darker. Because with these Copics you can layer, so you can put one layer down and then come back and add another layer, which you can see right there on the leg where that happened, where I'll leave areas that I want as highlight with only one layer, and then the darker areas I'll go over with the same marker. I'm going over twice to leave it a shade darker, but I want it to still match the overall consistency. So here I took a little break. I was going to edit this out, but I'm going to leave it in the video because I wanted to talk about some other things regarding the skin tone too. So I think it's a good idea to consider your character and all of the aspects of who the character is. So like Wolverine, for example, I feel that he's kind of like a hardworking person. I could see him, working a lot on a sunny day and not, worrying about sunburn. So I made his shoulders, and I still want to add a little bit of color to his triceps area too, to show that, he has a redder skin on his shoulders and on his triceps, to kind of show that he's like a hardworking guy, that he was working probably, I don't know, I could imagine on some sunny day in a field or something, helping people or doing something. And he got a little sunburn. So these little subtle things are kind of cool to add into your art, because it creates a story. You can then build on it when you're telling people about it and say like, oh yeah, I was thinking of this and I considered this and all of these other things. And I think it adds some good emotional connection with the art, where it seems more a little bit more real. The story seems more interesting and more fun. It makes your art, more fun. So I like to add little things like that that are subtle, that maybe a lot of people won't notice. Maybe some people will, and then when they ask you about it, you can tell them, yeah, I wanted to add, a darker area to his shoulders, to maybe show that he was a little bit sunburned. I just thought that was interesting, an interesting way to look at your art. And here I am penciling everything after the fact, after I go over everything with Copic, and I get that all mapped out. I like to go back and darken the lines. And this is not the end of my process. What you're seeing in a lot of my videos is not the end of these drawings. They're not complete here, but they're on their way, and that's the whole purpose of showing you guys this stuff, is to go over techniques, form, all of these things, and considerations that I take into account when I'm working on my art, and how to be art-minded. Really, that's what my channel is all about. So I want you guys to not only be artists, I don't want you to just be good at drawing, I want you to actually be artists. I want you to consider what you're doing, and to think about, all of the intricacies that go into making art. It's not just a drawing. It takes a lot out of an artist, and it takes a lot more than you imagine on the surface. So keep at it, and we're nearing the end of the video here, so I hope I covered some things that you guys find interesting. If you get a chance, go check me out on smartful_creations, SMARTFUL _ creations, not FULL, it's just one L. Check me out there for updates and new things going on with my art, and I try to post on there as often as I can. And thanks again for stopping by the channel. Keep well and stay safe during the outbreak.